What's going on, everybody? Zack Rosenblatt here with Mike Kaye. We're at AT&T Stadium. We're actually like in a closet in the back. We're in this weird closet by ourselves. We hope it doesn't lock after us. I think we're gonna be okay.
I also hope it doesn't sound like a locomotive's in the background.
Yeah, I know.
There's some sound coming out.
Yeah, it's all. I mean, we're dealing with what we can. The quality of this maybe will align with the quality of the performance of the Eagles today. That was, in a way, I think it was almost worse than the Saints game, to be honest, just because if you consider all the circumstances and, like the Saints were just a buzzsaw. They were so good last year at that point. They were rolling. The Eagles started like Devontae Bosby at corner in that game, I think, or he played most of the game at least. That game was 48-7. This one was 38-10, right? 37-10. It never really felt like they were in it. There were like moments where if they had hit a play, it would have gotten closer. But there was like the Eagles have used the excuse we were 1 or 2 plays away so many times over the last 2 years that it got so old, and you just can't do that for these last 2 weeks. We're going to get into the game in particular, but as we sit here right now, I wrote this. This is just straight up a bad football team. They didn't do anything well in any phase of the game. What do you come out of this game thinking? And technically, they are still in the playoff race, and Doug Pederson has come back from a lot of things in his coaching career already. But like, where do you sit with this team right now? Is it over? Like, I know it's extreme. But
I don't think it's over.
Yeah.
I just don't know what the solution is.
Yeah,
I think
it's not one thing.
You know, there are a lot of things wrong with this team. Hey, the pass rush showed up for a minute.
It was like 3 plays and then it went away again.
Yeah. Look, this is a team. Oh, I was also listening. Side note: I was listening to our last podcast. I said "look" probably 67 times, so I'm going to try to stop.
That's funny. Look,
Jordan Howard, Hassan Ridgeway, and Dallas. Well, not even Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, that fumble. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll excuse 52 of the 46 players that played in this game.
The guys that didn't. The Nate Herbig, he wasn't hurt and he was inactive. You can't blame him.
Poor guy.
He was the one guy. Even Sharif Miller got in over him. Yeah.
What does that say? Boston Scott got some nice garbage time carries for the second streak.
I didn't even notice he did, honest. Oh, and he got good yards, too.
Yeah,
he kills it on those.
He kills it, man. No one knows how to kill it.
He might be better running back than Miles Sanders.
No one knows how to kill the clock in a blowout loss quite like Boston Scott. All right, anyway, let's get serious for a second. There's been a lot of talk about trade deadline deals, and you know how he's going to make one. I don't know how you can reasonably be a buyer at this point and invest, because, look, like we said, there's multiple issues here. Unless Howie's planning on making like 3 trades at this deadline, this is not a quick or easy fix. This is beyond an extra talented player on this 53-man roster. Cool, you trade for somebody, you cut Nate Herbig, poor guy, and you get him in here. Like, cool, bro. Like, but that's not enough. This secondary can't cover. The pass rush is too inconsistent. The receiving, look. Okay, the three offensive cornerstones of the receiving game for the Super Bowl team, Nelson Agholor, Zach Ertz, and Alshon Jeffrey had 1 catch for 6 yards in the first half. That's abysmal. Like, I asked Carson Wentz immediately when he started his presser. Like, you can go back and look, and I think he was surprised by the question. Immediately I go, what's your like level of trust and faith in this receiving group? And he's like, oh, it's extremely high. Yeah. You know, I try, as you'd expect. It's not. I'm sorry. I don't want to take like a quote and like turn it, but there's clearly something wrong, whether it's Doug Pederson who has a lack of faith or Carson Wentz who has a lack of faith. I think it's one of those things where, look, outside of Dallas Goedert having 3 catches for 48 yards and a touchdown in the first half, the receiving game was
non-existent.
It was 2 catches for 3 yards because Jordan Howard had a negative 3 yards.
Ertz wasn't even targeted until the third quarter.
And you know what? Honestly, he didn't make that much of an impact afterwards. This is like perplexing. It's like everyone's regressed. Defenses know how to plan for the offense. Offenses know how to plan for the defense. There are no adjustments. And I think you and I have both backed Doug Pederson and Jim Schwartz and their play calling for a very long time. This game is completely different.
It's getting harder to defend them.
It's like there's no adjustment to personnel or circumstance. If you are getting beat, adjust. If you cannot throw the ball downfield, adjust. You and I were talking about this with the Philly.com guys about scheming up and creating mismatches. And it's like all of the imagination that Doug Pederson had in his first 3 years just dried up magically. This is a team that has a rookie running back in Miles Sanders who is constantly mismatched, and teams now know he's getting mismatched. Put Jordan Howard in there, run some 22 personnel, 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, so that way you can gauge what they're trying to take away, and you can make them pick their poison that way. I don't know, Zach. This is a team that doesn't seem to, from a coverage standpoint, right? We talk about being frustrated from a coverage because you don't have answers. There's no answers. All it is just canned,
Yeah, they say the same things every week.
Right. So from a coverage standpoint, it's hard to explain to a readership, this is why this is happening. This is what they're thinking. This team doesn't have one answer for this problem, and there are several problems, if that makes sense.
So we're going to get into everybody who deserves blame, and there's a lot of people who do for where they're at right now. I think it starts with Doug Pederson. You look at the way they've started these games. This has been a problem dating back to last season. Mm-hmm. The first 15 plays of the game are scripted. We've talked about this ad nauseum on this podcast and in our stories. They just cannot figure it out. Doug Pederson, for the life of him, cannot figure out the beginning of games. And that falls entirely on him. I think we've reached a point, maybe we're far past the point, where they clearly miss Frank Reich. I don't know how he was involved in the process and how it's different than Mike Groh is involved in the process. Mike Groh is going to be the one scapegoated for all of this. And I don't think it's his fault. I don't know what he does. I just don't know what he does behind the scenes. But so just look at this season. So they went behind the Washington Redskins 20-7. They went behind the Atlanta Falcons 17-6. They went behind the Detroit Lions 20-10. They trailed the Packers 10-0. They trailed the Vikings 24-3, and they fell behind the Dallas Cowboys 27-7. That's double digits in the first half of how many games was that? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games, and they played 7 games. And, if Doug Pederson wants to be considered this offensive mastermind that everybody was labeling him as after that year, this is child's play. He is incompetent in the first half, in the first quarter, and they're in deficits. I know they turned the ball over 2 times. That's not Doug Pederson's fault. He didn't fumble the ball when Dallas Goedert fumbled it, and then I guess Wentz fumbled it the next drive, right? You can't turn the ball over 2 times, but this is how they make excuses for it. They're like, well, Doug says this every week. If one play here, one play there goes, well, you're not making those plays. Stop making that excuse. If you were good at this, you would be making those plays. Call better plays. And even after the beginning of the games, he keeps doing this. It's almost like they're too, you talked about, you don't know if it's Doug Pederson that doesn't trust the receivers or Carson. I get the sense at least that Doug Pederson doesn't, because they were trailing by multiple scores in the third quarter, and there was a stretch where he ran it 3 times in a row, with Miles Sanders on top of that, by the way, who just so clearly is worse than Jordan Howard. Let's just call a spade a spade. He's not as good of a football player as Jordan Howard is right now, and they're really trying to make him happen. They're really trying to make it a thing. He does not see holes. His vision just isn't there as a rookie. And I just think a lot of this falls on Doug Pederson. We're going to talk about Howie Roseman in a little bit, I'm sure. I think he deserves a lot of the blame for the way this roster is constructed. But, I don't know. Doug Pederson obviously has gained himself a lot of leeway from winning that Super Bowl, and he deserved it for the run he went on and the way he bounced the team back from last year. And I wouldn't put it past him to turn it around again this year. I think he's that good of a coach. He's good at motivating. This team in particular, though, feels a little like it needs a little something extra. I don't know if cutting Zack Brown is not enough. Doug Pederson declaring the team's going to win is not enough. I don't know what they're going to do, but Doug Pederson deserves a lot of the blame for where they're at right now.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with everything you said. They are 3-4,
yeah.
Right?
Season's not over.
Let's keep that in perspective. This is an 8-8 team.
Yeah.
It's an 8-8 roster. That's what it is. When you take away Malik Jackson, you take away Deshaun Jackson for an extended period of time, and you just don't the time to make trades was probably 2 weeks ago when you had a 2-game winning streak.
They were banking on all these guys coming back.
Yeah. you can't take that to the bank, sir.
But also, not to cut you off, but like the whole thing about them having all this depth was they were supposed to be able to cover themselves. Like Deshaun Jackson, he's not going to play every game. And you can't. They went into the season. Everybody was saying this was a team with maybe the best weapons in the NFL, if not one of the top 5. Mm-hmm. The only difference from last year is that Deshaun Jackson isn't playing. Everybody else is the same, and their running backs are better.
Yeah, I'd say this team's probably the second most disappointing team in the league outside of the Los Angeles Chargers.
And the Browns have been up there too.
Yeah, but
relative to the hype. But I don't know if that wasn't a deserved hype.
I think they were always going to be a paper tiger.
But yeah, the point
being, 8-8 for them. There's a lot wrong with this team, and I think when you have somebody like Dallas Goedert, a guy who's been built up as a reliable but oddly used weapon, and he fumbles off the bat, it's like, what more can go wrong?
Teams are forcing them to go to Goddard, by the way.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting to me? Everybody plays a hand in all of these woes. It's
not one person. It's not one area.
As good as Hassan Ridgeway has been in spurts, he's also, he's still a replacement level player.
Yeah.
Dallas Goedert has a fumble tonight. Miles Sanders is the
he's one of the lowest rated running backs in the NFL.
Is the Jay Courtney of this running back rotation. They keep trying to make it happen. He had that one breakout role in Suicide Squad where he wasn't the worst thing on the team, and that's what Miles Sanders' pass catching is.
But wasn't there today though.
It wasn't there today. I mean, he got targeted a couple of times.
But I mean, the 30-yard bombs
right.
or whatever.
Zach Ertz.
He's been bad.
I mean, I don't even know if he's been bad as much as he's just not been a key to the offense.
He hasn't been able to overcome what teams are throwing at him. He was really emotional in the locker room after, by the way. He was on the verge of crying.
Yeah, there was a lot of emotion in that voice. He kind of discussed his faith, and that was what kind of keeps him in this stuff.
You can tell he's frustrated he's not getting targeted more, by the way. Like that, he definitely wouldn't answer that.
I think there's a lot to the criticism of him getting targeted a lot last year. I think that was like a real sensitive issue. That said, Zach Ertz is probably the best playmaking player on offense. The most consistent, and so if you had to, frankly, at this point, I'm sure everybody would love for Ertz to get targeted all the time at this point. Like I said, you had Ertz, you had Agholor, you had Jeffrey in the Super Bowl, and that was enough. This is not a Nick Foles, Carson Wentz thing. Carson Wentz did very well for the first several games.
He was amazing that year. Yeah.
And those were his weapons. Everybody can make excuses of, oh, wow, they don't have Deshaun Jackson. Well, you know who the Deshaun Jackson was of that year? Torrey Smith. And everybody thought he was the weakest link until they got into the playoffs.
Yeah, he was good in the playoffs.
But that's the reality. Mac Hollins.
Why is he on this team?
I don't get it. I'm trying to figure out who's more detrimental to the offense's success, Nelson Agholor or Mac Hollins. At least Nelson Agholor, maybe takes away a safety every now and then. What is Mac Hollins
What is his purpose on this team? I don't get it.
And they keep playing him. And
almost every snap.
And it's cool, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Look, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside had a rough week 3. Yeah, he had a rough week 3. That doesn't mean you say, oh, well, I guess we should move on and not play him for the rest of the year. I just think making him only the sole backup to Alshon Jeffrey is a mistake, because when you lose Alshon Jeffrey, that's going to be a problem, because he's going to be, he's going to be cold. He hasn't really been targeted. There's nothing going on there. Outside of Cam Johnston, Jake Elliott, who's been consistent on this team?
Jordan Howard,
yeah.
Yeah, even when he's had bad games, I think it was because the blocking wasn't really... Because he's a guy that needs the blocking a little more than maybe Sanders does. But,
yeah. I just, I can't... I'm trying to find a Pro Bowler on this team, and it's not,
Brandon Brooks, I guess. I don't know, but the offensive line was bad tonight.
Yeah, they weren't good.
Lane Johnson... Okay, so let's start...
Yeah, Lane Johnson got beat.
Let's start blaming some people, and we'll start with Lane Johnson. He's as self-aware of it as anybody on the roster, and that's why he's such a good, for our sake, good guy to talk to after a loss. And he immediately was like, I wish I could have that back. It was in the second drive, I believe.
Yes.
He by the way, he had never given up a sack to DeMarcus Lawrence.
Correct.
They've talked trash in the past. Like, this is a thing. And it was really early in this game, and he got beat really bad. DeMarcus Lawrence had a strip sack. The Cowboys recovered it. I believe later in the first half, he gave up a tackle for loss to DeMarcus Lawrence. He had a really bad penalty later in the second half that basically forced the Eagles to kick a field goal. They were at the 9-yard line, and he got a 10-yard penalty.
Bummer.
You just can't have that sort of game from him. We thought the focus was going to be on how Andre Dillard plays. And I know maybe there's some plays he didn't look great, but I noticed Lane Johnson screwing up way more than I noticed Andre Dillard screwing up.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
Who's anybody else? Somebody else that caught your eye?
I just,
we talk about Nelly.
Let's talk about Nelson, right?
So I wrote a story about there's a play that kind of everybody on social media kind of latched onto because it's kind of looked like a few of the plays that he's had this year where Carson Wentz targets him downfield. It looks like he has leeway to the ball, and it appears like we don't know we're not down on the field. It looks like he slows up and either doesn't dive for the ball or lost it in the sky, or he's just not good at tracking it. Like, I don't know what the issue is, but there was another one like that. The Eagles were down by 20. They just had an interception. Like, if they were going to come back, it was going to start here. It falls in front of Nelson Agholor, and then the Eagles turned it over on the next play.
Yeah, I was talking to another writer about this. I think maybe it had something to do with tracking the ball. He just didn't track the ball well, but it's not a good look. I think he needs a change of scenery. I think that's evident. And you know what, that said, he's not even like the fifth worst thing about this game. Like, you can't fumble on that first drive. It looked like they actually scripted
Talking about Goddard's fumble?
Yeah, they scripted plays very, very well. Did Goddard make up for it later on?
He had a nice touchdown, but...
Yeah, I mean, Carson Wentz,
they were in a hole already at that point, though, because of the fumble.
You got to put it on the receiving group. I mean, I think there were penalties. Miles Sanders had on the third kickoff, he inexplicably took it out of the end zone.
Oh, yeah.
Gave the offense terrible field position. I believe they still scored on that drive, but it's one of those things where they lucked out by 2 personal foul calls. I mean, I think Jim Schwartz deserves a lot of blame for this. They could not get off the field, and it's like there's no adjustment. They don't change their approach. They blitz at awkwardly weird times. It's just nothing worked, and his group as a whole did not play well. I mean, Prescott completed 21 to 27 passes. That's 77.8% of his passes.
This is one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's hard to question.
Like, if you look at the only teams worse than them, they're among the worst teams in the NFL. So, I thought Jalen Mills played relatively okay. For his first game back, I thought he was pretty good.
Yeah, he had a nice interception there in the end zone that didn't matter.
Carson,
it's just Fletcher Cox finally had his first sack of the season.
And he forced a fumble, too.
Yeah, the pass rush got there, but it didn't seem like they were in opportune moments. The running game did not play as well as they normally have. They gave up 111 rushing yards and a touchdown to Zeke. They gave up...
Tavon Austin had that 20-yard touchdown where Orlando Scandrick just decided not to try and tackle him.
Well, I mean, it was a tough match. I mean, he got turned around. That was Tavon Austin's got speed for days. I mean, I'm not going to make an excuse for Scandrick.
Scandrick didn't look very good out there.
Yes, he did not. Yeah, there
were a lot of jokes about him being a double agent for his old team.
Yeah, well, that seems to always be the case when the Eagles sign like a former
Giant. That's true. It's pretty rare that a former Cowboy works out. Tony Pollard had a few nice runs.
Yeah.
Dak Prescott had improbably an 8-yard gain on a QB sneak.
Yeah,
they were trying to get rough. 1 yard. They just couldn't tackle him. The tackling was bad.
Yeah, I mean, look, we said it in the preview. Nathan Gary was going to get run over, and that's exactly what happened. Yeah, Camus did not play all that well.
Malcolm Jenkins didn't play well.
Yeah, he had a rough night.
I mean, just all around, man.
Sendejo made a couple of nice plays, but it's just a group loss. This is really a team loss. And I thought it was interesting after the game, Doug Pederson took full blame. And I kind of hate when coaches do that. Just say it.
Just
man.
say what's wrong.
John Mayer said, "Say what you need to say." Okay, do it, dude. For real. That's very frustrating for somebody who has to cover this team. It's no. Say you just didn't block very well. Say that Carson needs to throw. And you know what? Actually, don't just say they need to do better. Why do they need to do better? Yeah. Also, when you're going to say, "Oh, it's fixable," how are you going about fixing it? Everybody says
you haven't fixed it yet.
Yeah, you clearly don't have a clue.
What are they doing during practice during the week? I don't understand.
I don't know. They've got a really good music selection, though. I will say that.
You understand the day to day and the X's and O's and stuff better than I do. Offensively, aren't they spending most of the time scripting those first 15 plays? By the way, not to go back on that.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of install, but the problem for them is not the install. Right? So they're going up against a bad passing defense in practice.
Yeah, good point.
So I'm wondering if they just have a lot of really a lot of confidence based on what they're doing against a really bad passing defense. Look, this team is talented. This is all execution stuff. I don't see this as being
So it's coaching.
Well, no, Doug Pederson's not out there fumbling the ball.
Okay, fair. That's fair.
Does he need to get them more prepared? Sure, but these turnovers are just
they had 4 turnovers. By the time Wentz had his interception, the game was pretty much over.
Yeah, he had 2 fumbles too. He had 3 turnovers.
So we haven't talked about Wentz yet. What'd you make of his performance tonight? It's hard to blame him, but he didn't look good in the second half.
He was more so the problem than he had been in previous
games. Okay, that's a good way of putting it. But he doesn't deserve all of the blame, which he'll get from some people in our city.
I got an email already from a guy who complained about me praising him against the Vikings when I actually thought he played relatively well. He's like, "I can't wait to hear your excuses." I was like, "Bro, I don't have any excuses. Not that I had them to begin with." Sometimes, you have to kind of take something for face value. He had a brilliant throw to Dallas Goedert. For that touchdown pass, that 28-yard, brilliant throw. He has one of those maybe once a game. But realistically, overall, I didn't think he did enough to move this team. We've said it before. He's not the type of guy that's going to will a team down the field. Aaron Rodgers hasn't really even been that guy lately either. He needs help. It is what it is. I think there are people that are so defensive of Carson that it's become kind of a complex. Certain bloggers, tend to really hone in on that. And then I also think there's, on the flip side of the coin, I think there are people that criticize him very, very much and don't have the context to kind of say, well, they weren't good. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm very tired.
Yeah, it's pretty late.
Look, I don't know if you change up your personnel. I don't know if you make trades. Let's talk about that.
So I wanted to end on the Howie Roseman discussion. So I made a list in my story from the gun of all the veteran players that the Eagles have signed or traded for basically since the start of the offseason. I'll list them off and then you can just see how it looks. So Malik Jackson, Deshaun Jackson, LJ Fort, Andrew Sendejo, Vinnie Curry, Jordan Howard, Hassan Ridgeway, Zach Brown, Stefan Wisniewski, Timmy Jernigan, Jonathan Cyprian, Blake Countess, Duke Riley, Paul Warlow, Rudy Ford, and I put Craig James in there. Of that group, I think you could only say that Howard and Ridgeway exceeded expectations, maybe James, but that was only one game, really. The 2 Jacksons have been hurt all year. You kind of knew that was coming with Deshaun. It's hard to blame the Eagles for the Malik thing, though. That is tough. Jernigan's been hurt. I think Curry's been fine, what you expected. He's met expectations. The rest of them have either not met them or are not on the team anymore. LJ Ford is playing well on defense for the Ravens, by the way. Zach Brown was a disaster. Rudy Ford has been kind of way worse on special teams than the Eagles have needed him to be. He was pretty bad tonight.
Yeah, he's had some penalties.
Yeah, which is kind of an issue. So the point being, Howie Roseman has all those guys I just listed, besides maybe Craig James and maybe Rudy Ford, have been in the league for a while, are close to 30. In theory, they signed them because they can help right away or something But Howie Roseman just struck out this offseason. I think it's only week 7. I think you can say that. The Jordan Howard trade looks like a really, really good one.
So does the Ridgeway trade.
But this ties into last year where the only good moves they made were probably Michael Bennett. Is there anyone else? The Golden Tate trade was a disaster.
Cam Johnston.
But that he was a guy that was like in training camp with them the year before, so I don't really give him that much. And he's a punter.
Listen,
like the point
his
being,
name
like,
is Cam
like so Howie Roseman did an awesome job. I don't know if Joe Douglas or he deserves the credit for all the guys they uncovered that year, Patrick Robinson, guys like that. But he just has done a poor job of building this depth chart. They have the core pieces of Fletcher Cox and Carson Wentz and Zach Ertz and Lane Johnson and Jason Kelsey, but he just has not done a good job of building this roster to be prepared for every situation like he should be. And I don't know if it they need to make trades if they want to make a run at this division or a wild card or whatever. But is it really worth trading draft picks for guys that are probably going to leave after this season? You know, if it's Emmanuel Sanders or Chris Harris, they're going to be free agents. And so you're trading these draft picks, and maybe I don't know if this team needs to rebuild, but I don't know if it's a good idea to be trading away draft picks right now. I know I said they should have traded 2 firsts for Jalen Ramsey. Maybe this is why they didn't. Maybe he didn't think this team was good enough to make a run.
Whoa. Okay. So yeah, I agree with all that. I think we don't know obviously what goes on in Howie Roseman's head. But he's kind of in a pickle here. So he didn't trade for Jalen, and we said that, he's got to draft well, and that's the only way that not trading for Jalen makes it worth it. Well, he hasn't drafted well overall. And, you have to think to yourself, do I get maybe 2 guys to come in here, and is that enough to make the playoffs? Because if I don't make the playoffs, I'm going to be criticized heavily for trading a 4th and a 3rd, even though I'm going to probably spend it on a guard who sits on the bench for two years and whatever. So I think he's got to weigh that, and he's really got to look in the mirror, because this was a team that he really felt was ready to win and contend for an NFC title and get back to the Super Bowl, and it's not. I think something we don't talk about, obviously the Golden Tate trade was very heavily criticized in hindsight. But how much more would it have been criticized had they not made the playoffs and not won that first round?
Yeah, because he had that play against the Bears. So if you remove that, there's no positive out of that.
Right. Yeah. So, imagine that, and they trade for somebody and it doesn't work out. I mean, that's a lot of criticism to take, and maybe it's unnecessary criticism to heave onto yourself. If you don't think the team's good enough, why are you going to give away future assets? Everybody's talked about how much he wants to protect compensatory picks and all this other garbage.
Enough of that.
Enough.
We're learning that, just go get guys.
Yeah, stop being cute.
Yeah.
I've never really bought into the whole compensatory. I think it's smart, but not when it's to your detriment.
Yeah, and I mean it's a late third. It's basically a 4th round pick if you at the best. Yeah.
The Nick Foles thing, that makes sense. If you lose a guy that is going to get exponential money, go for it. But the fact that you just cut LJ Fort so you could pick up a 6th or a 5th round pick or whatever, that's banana pants to me. You know what I mean? It's clown shoes. And, clearly that was a mistake. I mean, if they cut Zach Brown this past week, they clearly had some issues with him earlier than that. And you cut LJ Fort 2 weeks earlier.
Well, and beyond that, so instead of only signing guys that don't impact the compensatory formula, go and get Zadarius Smith. Go and pay money for Shaquille Barrett. Buy low on a guy like that. They just didn't sign any of those guys, clearly because they didn't want to win. And the only guys they signed were LJ Ford and Anderson Tejo. They've already cut one of them.
Well, and part of that, too, is you want to make sure that you're prepared for Carson's contract, and Carson's contract's going to eat away. It's the reason why everybody talks about the Super Bowl window, because once you get a quarterback, you've got to pay that.
They might already be out of the window, by the way.
Which is fair. I mean, I think that this team is headed towards a rude awakening. I think this has a lot of, there were some inflated dollars here, and the recession's coming, and it's going to be bad.
So we'll end on this. Do you think between now and the Bills who are 5-1, by the way, between now and that game, do you think the Eagles make a trade, or do you think they wait until after that game see if they lost that and we're in trouble?
I do think they'll make a trade before that game. Now's
the deadline's 2 days after the Bills game, by the way.
Right, now's the time. If you're going to make the trade, make it
do it now, yeah.
Monday or Tuesday.
And before before the numbers go up. Because once you get close, I never understood why teams wait until the second before the deadline to make deals.
If you're a buyer, you should trade before the deadline.
If you're a seller, wait until the last spot.
Yeah, right, because then you have your leverage.
Yeah. I'm intrigued by the idea of Emmanuel Sanders. He feels like a Howie type move. Maybe you try and do Agholor and a pick for him.
I also like him better for this offense than I do.
I mean, he's a veteran who's not going to make mistakes. Like they need men in the room.
And Chris Harris factors into the whole "Hey, I know you" thing that Joe Douglas brought here, which I think is asinine. So with that said, they're going to have to make a few moves to make this really worth their while. And now if they can get them, remember we talked about not having to win trades, but getting the right guys in here. They've got to be good fits. Emmanuel Sanders, from what I've seen from afar, is a really swell fella. Same with Chris Harris. Don't make funny faces at me, or is that your contacts that you're trying to figure out? Anyway, I think we're going to wrap up here, but do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think I pretty much ranted all I could for the night. Yeah, we'll end on that note. Let us know what you guys think after this loss, how you're feeling about this team going forward, who you think they should trade for in the comments. Thanks for listening. We'll hit you guys another podcast later this week, maybe an emergency one if they make a major trade. I know you guys love a good emergency podcast. Maybe somebody gets fired or released this week. I don't know. But we'll end on that note, and thanks for listening, guys.